So we often get asked the question, how do we remove glue from floors? Because it's not uncommon for a commercial cleaner to come across a situation where their client has decided they want to replace their carpet tiles or their vinyl flooring and put in a new flooring, and have asked you to help them do that. And what we have found is that it is not a normal part of a commercial cleaner's job to remove glue. And so we get the question 100 times a month, almost. And I think there are some basics that you need to know about removing glue from floors, and a few questions you need to ask yourself. And those questions would be as follows. First is to understand what is the subfloor, meaning what is the glue stuck to? Is it concrete? Is it wood? Is it vinyl? Is it stone, tile? What is under that glue that you're going to have to remove? The second question you would ask yourself is, what type of glue is it? Because that's a very important factor in determining how long it's going to take you and the method you're going to use to remove the glue. So what type of glue is it? The third thing you want to ask yourself is, what is the condition the floor must be in once you've removed the glue? Because if you're going to come back and replace it with more glue and another carpet or other tiles, the final finish is not as critical. However, if the idea is to remove the glue and have a bare floor, like a bare concrete floor, then there might be additional steps required to make sure that that floor looks good. And then finally, more from a logistics and planning perspective, you need to know, how many square feet are you working in? You need to know what kind of ventilation there is. You need to know what kind of time frames you're working in. All these help you plan and price the work that you need to do. So as we said, the first thing that we need to determine is the type of floor you're working on. And if you determine that it's some kind of a hard floor, like let's say concrete or tile or stone, that's one method. But if you find that it's wood, it's a completely different approach. But in today's video, what we're going to talk about is really removing glue from concrete, because that's the most common subsurface you will find. It is very rare for you to have to take glue off of ceramic tile or stone. It's most likely going to be on concrete, and in any case the method's the same. But today we're going to talk about removing glue from concrete. So the second question was, you need to determine the type of glue that you're dealing with. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of formulations of glue that people have used over the years. The types of glue have evolved, the source of glue has changed, so it is almost impossible to know exactly what kind of glue you're dealing with. However, there are basically two types of glue. There's one which is kind of a yellowish, beige, brown colored glue, which tends to harden and is more brittle. And there's a second type, which is the dreaded black or asphaltic glue. And these two have different approaches in terms of how to remove them. So let's take them one by one. The first one, which is the beige, yellow, brown type of brittle glue, that one is a little bit easier to remove. And perhaps the first thing one would want to do is to have a small scraper and try and scrape that glue off the floor. And if it's coming off easily, you might want to use that method first to scrape off as much of the hard glue as you can, leaving a little bit to the end where you might need to use some kind of a solvent. But the first thing you want to do is try and take it out by hand. This obviously also depends on how big the area is. If you're dealing with an area that's 1,000 square feet or more, you probably don't want to use manual labor to remove it. You probably want to get yourself a machine. But again, if it comes out easily, that's a key indication of how easy the job will be and how much solvent you need to use. So let's say you've been able to remove some of the hard glue by hand, and you've got some stubborn pieces here and there or chunks. One thing you could do is use a solvent like Centaur's Glue Off. So Glue Off is a degreaser, but it's a lemon-based glue remover, and could be used on that kind of yellowish beige glue. What you would do is use a mop and bucket to apply it over the areas where you need to remove the glue. Let the glue off do its work. It will take 15-20 minutes. The longer you leave it, the better, without letting it dry off, obviously, but the longer you leave it, the better, because it will really work the glue off of the floor. And then you can go back with a couple of different types of tools. The most common, perhaps, type of tool you could use is a mastic removal tool, something like this from Diamond Brush. And this one has diamond blades on the edge and is great for removing mastic or glue from floors. And it lasts for a really long time. So, you can probably rent these as well from places like, from hardware stores. But certainly you can also own one if you tend to do this work a lot. And that's probably the best way to get that beige glue off. When it comes to the black stuff, the black gummy stuff, that glue is very stubborn and hard to remove. And the glue off type chemicals may not be enough. And so in cases like that, and especially once you've determined it is sticky and it's old and it's kind of well bonded to the floor, you may want to use some kind of a stripper. And we have something called Full Force. This is a stripper that can be used on that kind of black gum. And what you'd want to do is, as you did with the other one, is to apply it liberally over the black glue. Let it dwell, let it do its work, and then come back with something a little bit more aggressive. And there are a couple of different ways in which you can do it. There are a few types of blades and tools that can be used. One option is segmented diamond blades. So these ones are really good at removing the gummy type of glue, but they tend to scratch the floor. So depending on your end goal, if you don't have the luxury of scratching your floor because you need to polish it, you might want to go with something slightly different. A trapezoidal, carbide-based metal tool can help remove that. It's got a nice sharp blade, so it actually cuts it very well without scratching the floor. But it's not as aggressive as the segmented diamonds. But these are typically the tools you would use with a machine like one of our rabbits or our stone chat to remove the black glue. And once you're done with either case, what you need to do is then take a mop and bucket, make sure that you remove any residual chemical left on the floor to make sure it's ready and clean for the next step in the process. Let me give you some pro tips, things that you should be aware of when you are considering removing glue from floors. The first, and this is more of a safety issue, is that if you are, for whatever reason, grinding or removing the glue in a dry condition, because sometimes you're not able to use solvents, and let's say you use a heavy-duty grinder, just make sure you are wearing the appropriate kind of mask or respirator, because historically glues have contained asbestos. And you want to make sure that either you test the glue, or if you're doing the work, you're wearing the right kind of respirator so that your health is not affected. A second pro tip is that glue removal can be back-breaking work, especially if you end up with the black kind of stuff, the black gummy glue. So the important part is to know what you're getting into and make sure you allow enough time and budget to get that work done. So if you're pricing it for somebody, make sure you know what type of glue you're getting into, so that you're making sure you make some money when you're doing the work. And the third pro tip is, because when you're using solvents, strippers, or glue removers, these things can stay on your machine and can affect your machine. So it's very important to make sure you clean all the tools that you've used after you've finished your job, especially when you're using chemicals.